And here he is, Jeff. Hello, my friend.
Yankelo? Is it that time already?
It is. It is 3:30 on the nose. It's the Yankelos.
Did I show up at the right time?
You're right on time, my
I
friend.
see two of my co-presenters. We're missing one, so we're gonna.
I'm
There
not
we go.
worried.
Ah,
I
Dr.
am not worried
Jones.
at all.
This is going to be the part we're going to have a panel
There he is.
discussion.
Okay.
Basically, guys, I'm gonna just jump on off. I'm gonna let you guys do your thing. See you in about a half an hour. And thank you so much. It's good to see you, Jeff, and it's good to see you, Dr. Jones. Looking forward to it.
We'll see you later.
Jeff Yankelo, what are you doing here?
So why am I here? Because King Arthur Flour is a part of the event. Noel is a good friend of ours. We've been doing pizza for a long time. And he asked us to participate and for me to moderate a panel with Dr. Jones and a couple bakers who we all know really well. So it's just a bunch of flour guys and bakers talking about flour. So I guess we could just get to it because we only got a half an hour. So I thought I would skip all the small talk and go into a short introduction. And then people can ask questions. You can ask questions, push us in any direction you want to. Okay. That sound good?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Okay. So I work with King Arthur Flour on the food service side. And we have a really strong relationship with a place called the Bread Lab at WSU in Washington State, Western Washington. Dr. Stephen Jones is the director of the Bread Lab and a good friend. So it's I'm finding it hard to say doctor because I usually just call him Steve. So he's such a humble guy. He usually doesn't mind. I once had to ask him, like, is it okay if I just call you Steve? So one of the things I thought we could talk about today are the direction we go in, like where we're going in the future, where we're headed, not so much in the past. We're not trying to point fingers or tell anyone they're doing anything wrong, but kind of maybe demystify some things. You know, these days you hear a lot of words that fresh mill, local, regional, single varietal, ancient. Every time I hear someone say, oh, Dr. Stephen Jones, the prince of heirloom and ancient grains, I like cringe because it's the complete opposite. I think what people don't understand is the thing they're doing at the Bread Lab and what Steve has always done is breed for flavor, nutrition, and it's about breeding for what we want and for baking versus most, you know, he's been a breeder for 20 some years, I guess 25 years, 30 years, I don't even know. And I think he changed direction and pursued something that meant more to him, and he probably knows more about breeding than I'll ever know, that's for sure. And I wanted him to tell us about something going on called Bread Lab Grains and where they're headed and what he sees the future and what's important, I think, about making an impact. Like people need to do what's right for them, and people should choose flour based on what works for them. And that could be consistency, that could be flavor, that could be local, and it matters to them. But I don't think people look under the surface enough, and that's okay. But I wanted Steve to talk about what he's doing now and where maybe he's been in the past and why he's pivoting to where he's going now and what direction he's going in. And then Anthony Ambaliotis, who has a bakery in Pittsburgh and Arizona, he has a farmer grow wheat for him and they use in their bakery. And then Louie Prager owns a bakery down here in San Diego, but also is now a PhD student at the Bread Lab working with Steve. So he kind of straddles the fence of the breeding and the baking, and he's always used specialty grains and made them work. And so I'm gonna send it to Steve and let him kind of talk about what he's doing and what he's been doing and where he's going and what he sees the future for wheat and the impact it has, you know, it can make if we do it right. So.
Well, yeah, thanks, Jeff, and it's a real pleasure to be here. It's real cool to see Woodstone too. They're just about 20 minutes up the road, and there's a big Woodstone oven about 20 feet behind me in the lab here. So really like their stuff too. So I'll go pretty quick. We don't have much time, and then we can just fill in the gaps as we go too. But we want to get to Anthony and Louie pretty fast. I'm Steve Jones. I'm the director of the Bread Lab. The program that I lead is a wheat breeding program. We're wheat breeders that bake. We also work with barley, rye, buckwheat, and things like that. My program has been in place since 1894. So the university hired the first winter wheat breeder in 1894. I'm the fifth one since 1894. All those people before me just worked on commodity wheat, and that's fine, but no one ever asked them, and they would have done it, but no one ever asked them to look at the nutritional value or the flavor of what they were doing. And we decided to do that, and we decided to do that outside of a commodity system where we're not told what to do. And we could do that because we're north of Seattle. So we're out of all the wheat belts and things like that. But our role, we really see as nutrition, flavor, and making it work for the farmer. So making it work for the farmer first, and then finding out the best use for that wheat, right? And we look at tens of thousands of different wheats every year. And by making it work for the farmer first, we can bring the price point down. So Jeff mentioned heritage and heirloom and ancient grains and things like that. We're not huge fans because we don't think they're climate friendly, and we don't think that they're the best use of the land. So we're interested in yield, and yield doesn't have to be evil. If you're looking at maybe corn in the Midwest, yield at any cost, you could characterize that as not real climate happy, right? So we're interested in high yield for the farmers with the lowest input possible. All of our research trials are on organic ground. We also are interested in regenerative, of course, and things like that. So we make it yield first. And then because we're breeders that bake, we needed a laboratory. So we made a little small bakery here. We have a deck oven, we have a revent convection rotary, we have a wood-fired buoy outside. If you go to our Instagram, you can see some really pretty pictures of a steel buoy made into a wood-fired oven. I had it up to 1,000 degrees the other day, just for kicks. And then we have a research kitchen, we have a mill room, we have all those types of things. We started the bread lab in 2009. In 2009, New American Stone Mills was not going. Most of the small regional mills in this country were not started up at that time. It was pretty novel and radical to talk about regional grains and local grains. Now it's neither. Now it's just commonplace, right? Everyone's dog is working on regional grains, which is fine. We think a mature system, however, is affordable to the miller, and that means affordable to the baker, whether it's a home baker or a commercial baker or whatever. So we're really interested in sort of shifting our focus in the bread lab, keeping flavor and functionality and nutrition in there, but also going towards affordability. That's the real challenge. How do we make these wonderful things affordable? We know they're flavorful, we know they're great. I'll just add as an aside too, just to give a pizza point here, is I watched Adam and Noel's bar pizza workshop a month ago or so. I sat in on it. And something I did immediately after it was over is I made that bar pizza dough with 100% whole wheat. And a few things happened. One, it was incredibly flavorful. One, it was incredibly nutritious. Two, it also sort of took out the factor of elasticity, right? So I'm not a pizza person, but I know something about it. We want it to extend. We also want it to kind of stay there, right? Once it does, we don't want it to snap back kind of vigorously. We can do tricks to do it. But if I was doing 100% whole wheat bar pizza, it stayed put where I put it. And it was amazing. So something that we're really trending towards too, we don't want to tell people what to do or what to eat or how to eat or anything like that. But it confuses me that people can't add 10% whole wheat to anything they do. Absolutely anything they make. Jeff makes an incredible 100% whole wheat croissant that I would challenge any white croissant to a contest with. You can add 10% whole wheat to anything. You could add 10% sawdust to anything and it's not going to affect it. You may not want to eat it. You could add 3% sand to anything and it's going to be okay. Again, you don't want to eat it. Just remember 10% whole wheat is 70% white flour, right? So you're only adding that little dab of bran and germ in there, and that's valuable to have in there. So these are things that we work on in the lab. Again, we're breeders that bake. We're interested in the environmental and economic footprint that we create within the fields that we work. And I'll switch over back to Jeff, and then we can go back and forth however you guys want to do it. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I think one of the things that you brought up that I totally spaced on is the whole wheat aspect, because I'm so used to it's just automatic now, especially at the bread lab. I just always work with whole grains, and I think it's fun to take that approach of not not work? Can it work? We just use it and adapt as needed, which usually means just adding more water. So
Yeah, exactly. Just bump the water a little bit, right? So
yeah, everyone always wants to know the secret. There aren't really any secrets.
Jeff gave me his recipe for a deli rye, which is 25% rye. It's all in the starter. The formula calls for AP. I lost the AP and I put in whole wheat and I added, 6% more hydration. It was honestly the best bread I've ever had.
Yeah, and
My older brother told me that, and he's a horrible fan of my bread. So
I think the other thing too is we forget, like in the U.S. especially, whole wheat wasn't really in high demand for so many years. The mills just made it when someone ordered it, and they reconstituted, blended some old bran and germ into a white flour stream. But now it's, still a small percentage, but much more in use. And so when I learned to bake in the probably early 2000, I guess it was right around 2099. There were just rules we didn't break when we just accepted things about whole wheat, like, oh, you can't do this, you can't retard it, it makes a brick. And those things are so far out the window because now I think the quality of whole wheat flour is better. People are taking chances, fermenting overnight, retarding overnight. And the quality overall is just so much better than it ever was before. And so I know Anthony and Louie both use a lot of whole grains. I think, Anthony, I was going to go to you next. One question. I don't know, you can tell us about your story and your use of the whole grain and the mill and the bakery and why you do it. And I think one interesting point I wouldn't mind hearing about, or maybe people, because one thing I always say is people talk like you, obviously, I know for a fact you and Louie both do things because it's important to you. In some cases, maybe the customer values it and maybe they don't, but you're making an impact and certainly like fulfilling something in you, that the reason you want to do it. But maybe talk about whatever you want, but maybe you can touch on that whole concept of like, do you think the customer gets it? Do they pay for it? Are they willing? Do they see the benefit of it? Or is it more just about, I know it tastes better and they don't need to know why, things like that.
Yeah, so I'm going to attack that right away. Okay. So guys like me, you, Dr. Jones and Louie, we do that stuff because we care, like we have a sense of pride. Right. So for us, we want to create stuff that's nutritional. We want to break the rules a little bit. Like you said, like 20 years ago or so, like there were things you didn't do. So for us, like for myself personally, it's a sense of pride and like putting your signature on things. Okay. Now, in terms of the customer, you know what customers buy? Customers mostly buy the story. So they like the idea of things being healthy, but more so than anything, the customers really like the story. So with that said, I've been baking for 20 years. I run the bakery here, my family's bakery here in Pittsburgh. About 8 years ago, we opened another bakery in little south of Phoenix called a little town called Coolidge, Arizona. And I'll never forget, like we were driving through this little town, and you're surrounded by farms. It's farm after farm and farmland. And it was my father, actually. He said, we should try to grow grain out here. We should grow our own grain out here so that we can control, how can we control more of our process from start to finish? And that way, you know what grain you're getting, how it's being farmed, and you're milling it. So that there's no additives or any of that stuff. So by chance, we met a farmer. The farmer grew only commodities out there, stuff like alfalfa and cotton, typical stuff for the Arizona climate. And this farmer didn't know anything about growing grain. So neither did we. But he was all for it because the commodity items he was growing and selling, he was selling for about 8 or 9 cents a pound. And, it can become much more attractive to tell somebody, hey, you can get 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 times more than that if we do grain. So listen, fast forward, I'll skip a lot of the story. It's been amazing for us. So we grow 50 acres of red fife. And then we're experimenting every year with different things. Like this year, we're doing some Sonoran white, some purple barley. And it's all about adding versatility to our product line. And so what we do is we grow it there, and then per Dr. Jones' recommendation, we got a new American stone mill, and we mill it in house, and then that's all of our fine and coarse whole wheat for the entire bakery. We'll mill anywhere from 400 to 600 pounds a day, and we'll use that as our workhorse grain, and it's really consistent, and the flavor is amazing, and customers like the story.
Yeah, but that's okay. I think it's okay. Whatever you got, people need to buy in, right? So you can't force it to them. So it's okay for them to buy the story, because it's the real story. That's the thing. It's not a bunch of baloney.
Yeah, and we don't do it just for the story. I say that like kidding. For us, it's about the pride and how can we make our bread better.
Right.
And
I know that's why you do it, for sure.
With this grain.
We should probably go over there.
With this grain, if you compare it to just your 50-pound bag of fine whole wheat that you get whoever, your commodity fine whole wheat or coarse whole wheat, it's light years. The flavor and the taste is light years different.
Yeah, and I think it's cool that we're like, part of the thing I was saying earlier, the story, the words that people with social media, I'm not going to point the fingers, but sometimes I see comments and people are like, oh my God, I just tried this new grain for the first time ever. And it's like, it's a line that was bred by a company that this person would swear off. I'm not going to mention the name, but like but Steve knows what I'm talking about. And it's like, these people, I mean, just tell the story, but make it real. Like, that's all I want to ask,
Yeah. And, even to touch a little deeper. So like, the really cool thing is like, we've created a small local grain economy in that little farm town, and we employ a farmer and he employs his people, and, he's created a small economy there. But then the trade-off is we get a very, very, very high quality grain that, nobody over here uses. That's for sure. I'm in Pittsburgh. Nobody's growing grain, on the other side of the country and shipping it over and milling it. So that's a cool thing that makes us really unique as well.
And I think that's important too, because what you're doing satisfies you and your customers, and it makes an impact on the farming side. And I think that's important too, to what all three of you are doing, is making an impact. And it takes volume to make an impact. It takes quantity.
Yeah. So like, we're supporting local, but even though it's 3,000 miles away from where we're doing it, that's our little local grain economy over there. So, we tried to grow grain here in Western PA, and it couldn't touch the grain that we were growing out in Arizona.
Yeah, because of the weather, I guess, the climate.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to let Louie, thanks, Anthony. We'll probably come back if we have time, but I'm going to let Louie jump in too. I've known Louie for, 10 years, I guess. I walked into his bakery when it was just a small little shop. It's grown quite a bit since then. He's now up in Washington State, but his bakery is 5 miles away from where I live. And I think Louie's done some interesting, a lot of specialty grain. He's gone through the milling. He's backed off the milling a little bit, kind of balancing the needs of the bakery as they've grown. And I think he has a really realistic view of why he does things. And something I've respected actually about Anthony and Louie is they both have grown within their means. And I think that's important as a business too. Like, as they got bigger, they got more equipment, as they could afford more things, they never went in over their head, and just the community supported both of these businesses. And I don't know, Louie, do you want to share your take on coming from the bakery, now breeding? I mean, you're breeding barley, but still you're working at the bread lab, you're working under Dr. Jones, you've probably seen more both sides than anyone. And maybe talk about why you do what you do, and why, how your views have changed over the years, or maybe more recently now that you're on the breeding side.
Yeah, so to begin with, it's always just been about good food to me. Like, I've always enjoyed good food, and when I set out to make bread, it was just to make better bread. And we've always been inclined to eat whole grains, and so that was sort of just my quest for better food. As I learned more and more about food, as you learn more, you realize you want to eat the whole grain, it's better for you. And So we started a bakery, and it's grown, and we do some volume for the size we are. I think something that's unique and I think has really helped us steer our ship of what we do is we started retail, and so it was always like what I believed in, and sort of a direct relationship with customers. And so I think that really they sort of adopted what I wanted to do, and they helped sort of spread the word. And because of that, we get to make a lot of whole grain breads. And because we're retail, we also do grocery stores, and we can't sell whole grain breads at the grocery stores for some reason. We sell a ton at our retails, but at the grocery stores, it's like all baguette. And so that's sort of my kind of how I got into this, and linking it up to where I'm at now, getting to study with Dr. Jones. And it's, so first of all, the grains at the bread lab, the whole grains I get to work with up here, like the flavors, you can't really compare what I can get at the bakery. So at Prager Bros, like we can't really, like we have to get the flour that comes in a bag, like in the flavor isn't different. So the thing I realized is the challenge for us to be able to like get bread lab grains out to people, and it's this whole, it's a big, the economy of scales are so big. It's like, how do you enter type of thing. And so previously, like an example, I guess would be, is we were working with Camas Country, and that was like our effort to get more of a regional grain. Granted, it's in Oregon, but something like Camas Country, they're not big enough to have square bags. So their bags are tapered on the ends. So the pallets would shift all the time in shipping, and I get a pallet and it's all slipped over and fallen over. And like that literally was like one reason I couldn't use the grain, is because when a pallet shows up and half of it's hanging off and bags are broken. And so that was sort of like, wow, the scale side of things is like how important it is. In just like a flour mill needs to have square bags in order to ship type of thing. And so I'm just right now trying to see, how do we at the bread lab get up to volume so we can sort of make some changes, and get in to meet Anthony and talk with him, and this sort of like, I question what regional is type of thing. And I think that I like the model they have. It is a regional system in Arizona, and although it's shipped to Pennsylvania, and I think that maybe I'm just starting to think for our bakery, potentially, yeah, we're not going to grow grains in San Diego, but potentially the community in San Diego can develop a relationship with a region somewhere else. And sort of like, that's something that came up through my time at the bread lab talking with Anthony. And I think that I'm sort of excited to sort of explore that, and question what is regionality, and how do we move forward with that. So,
and I think you bring up some good points, which is the big producers have figured some things out. So to just like write them off and ignore them, I think is a mistake. And I think you take what's happening at the bread lab and with smaller guys, and it's one thing you can point the finger at the big producers, or you can merge the two beliefs, so hey, the big guys have already figured this part out, but then the bread lab can say, well, this is what we figured out, and then that's how we move forward together, I think, and make an impact. And I think that's what you always are struggling with a little bit, and what a lot of people struggle with. So there are a few questions Noel put up in the chat I wanted to talk about real quick. One is talking about the difference between sifted wheat, like a type 65 or type 75 flour. And I think it's what we may call high extraction. And it goes back to what maybe, basically it's milling 100% whole grain is whole wheat, and then sifting out some of the bran. But I know Louie and Anthony probably maybe both use, I know Louie definitely uses some high extraction. But the concept, I think it goes back to what Dr. Jones was saying, like, it's better. I think at some point, I'm not sure you're going to see a huge difference in performance between white flour and a type 75 or type 85. I don't know how much more the nutrition is, but I guess I would say every little bit would help. So if it helps ease your way into the whole wheat, I guess that's a good reason to go there and use it and start transitioning. But maybe it's just as effective to put 10% whole wheat, like Steve said, instead of 40 or 50% sifted flour. You're probably going to get to the same place. I think sifted tends to be closer to white flour, depending on the ash, which is what the 75 or 85 represents. And then the whole wheat. And then also someone asked about the poor quality of pizzas in schools. And, basically cardboard pizza crust is what they're asking about. And I think it goes back to the problem of how much people are willing to accept. Like, really, I'm telling you, water, well, good flour for one, good, consistent milled flour. And honestly, like when people say, oh, our flour is fresh milled, all mills basically milled to order. I mean, if I order 4 pallets of whole wheat flour, which I did today for a customer, it's not going to be milled until a few days before it ships, honestly. But the key is you got to get the water up. And I don't think people are, the reason they're afraid of adding water is because they can't handle it. They're afraid of handling the dough or automating it. But it's just the balance of baking. It's the art and the science of baking, right? Like that's where whole wheat comes into play. And I think not being afraid to fail and not doing what's easy, and something that I learned early in my career, and I still use it every day. I just said it probably yesterday. I think I was on a meeting with Dr. Jones and some other folks at King Arthur, and we were talking about like just think big and think what you can do. Don't start with what you don't or what you can't do. Like so okay, so the schools require 51% whole wheat. It's honestly with a good whole wheat flour and a little bit of extra water, it's a no-brainer. It should work without any issues whatsoever. It shouldn't be cardboard, honestly, not to offend anyone. It's just a matter of knowledge and experience. And I mean, Louie is, I know I've been in Louie's bakery. It's like there was a loaf called the fresh milled loaf, and it's whatever they decided to mill that day. And then they just figured it out. And I think most people will find that customers are very forgiving. So customers like consistency, but if it tastes good, I think the Prager brothers, and I only say that because it's firsthand for me. If it tastes good, people come back, and then they actually start looking forward to it being different every day. And I know in schools that can't work, but I think in anything and everything can work. It just takes an open mind and some experimentation and trial and error, right? Like baking, I don't know, you guys, I'm sure Anthony and Louie can relate to this. Like sometimes it's new every day. You almost have to start over every day. You've been doing this for 10, 20 years, and and it takes about 2 seconds to feel like you should be doing something else because you just failed so miserably, It's just a matter of perseverance and practice over and over. But I don't know. Thanks, guys. I know it's a quick 30 minutes, but we could probably talk all day, and it's good to catch up. And I hope, I don't know, maybe at the very most, I would encourage people to open their minds up and not get stuck in the small details, look under the hood a little bit, try and figure out, the authenticity of what they're hearing and seeing and why they may be doing something. And if they really do want to make an impact, to really think about, are they making the right choices? I think it's fair to say, or is the story authentic or is it not? Maybe. So is it your time, Justin? You want to take it back from me?
I don't want to, but unfortunately, that is my job at this TIME. So I want to say thank you, Dr. Jones. Thanks, Jeff, Anthony, and Louie.
All
Thank
right.
you guys so much for sharing your story. Hopefully, we'll be able to get, come and play around and have some tasty bakes, as it were. And Dr. Jones, I think I got your recipe. So it's 2% sawdust, or is that 2% sand? I'll work on it. I'll get back to you. So thanks, guys. All right. Thank you. I think it was 2% sand and 10% sawdust. That's what it was.
It was. Yeah, you're right. Spot on. Yeah.
I got it. I'm going to work on it. All right. Thanks, guys. Awesome. Thank you, Louie. See you, bud. If anybody, you guys, please stay in the chat if anybody wants to ask these guys some questions. Really appreciate it. So.